Hey everybody, Mean Joe with Balsa USA. So tonight is the opening night for the Balsa USA Nieuport 17 live build. I'm here with Chuck Hamilton, and we are going to walk through the setup and what you guys are going to need to get started. Like we said in the intro for this video, we're going to keep this one pretty simple. We're going to have some tools we're going to show you. We're going to show you some alternative tools. If you have them around, you can use them. So you won't need to go out and buy a bunch of stuff to get going with this. And I wanted to remind you before we get started that the coupon code is active at balsausa.com. Enter in all caps, no spaces, N17 BUILD. That's N17 build. And you will receive 10% off of your Balsa USA 1/6 scale Nieuport 17. So you can build along with us if you so choose. So how are we doing tonight, Chuck?
We're doing great. We're just like the rest of the country. We're quarantined here at home, trying to stay out of our wife's hair, and try to get some good content for you guys out there, and let's build airplanes.
Absolutely. So just to explain to you guys a little bit about what we're going to try to do, we're going to try to bring this video along in a series. We're going to try to do these 3 nights a week. We're going to do Tuesdays from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Thursdays from 7 to 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, and Saturdays noon to 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. These videos will all be kept in a series on Balsa USA's YouTube page, and you'll be able to go on there at any time and download them. If you don't have the information, it's there right now. You can follow the Balsa USA YouTube channel at Balsa USA Airplanes. And you can also get us at Balsa USA Airplanes on Facebook, at Balsa USA on Twitter, and at Balsa USA Official on Instagram. And this stuff will be available for you guys to grab. So don't panic.
The whole goal here, sorry, Joe, didn't mean to jump in there.
No, that's all right. Go ahead.
And like Joe said, guys, there's a coupon code out there, N17 build, all caps, no spaces. Grab that 10% discount, jump in and join us. And even if you're a little bit late to the game, the videos are stored out there, so you'll be able to get back up and catch up with us. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to help you. Maybe you might have questions. This is your first build. And that's kind of what this is tailored for, on the setup and everything that's going along. But it's a great communication channel for someone to get started. And when Joe and I first talked about this, and Mark up at the shop talked about it, at all one point in time or another, we all built a Gillows or a Comet kit. If you can do that, this 6 scale N17, just a little bit bigger, we can do it here. Same tools, same parameters, just a little bit bigger, and now you get to fly.
And absolutely, one thing I wanted to point out, that is, if you haven't built a Gillows airplane, or if you haven't built anything else, you can still do this. I will say that you're going to find, having built a few of the Gillows airplanes myself, you're going to find that those are great quality kits. But if you get a little bit bigger, like say the 1/6 scale Balsa USA line, you're going to find that it's a little easier to build because the parts are bigger and they're not so brittle. That was one of the things that I found during these builds is that building the Gillows kits can actually get kind of tinkery. You know, you get down small and you break into tiny little pieces, which is, you know, just part of it. But with this, you're going to find it's going to be quite a bit easier. So just like Chuck said,
well, Joe, when you and I were building Gillows kits 100 years ago, our hands were a little bit smaller.
Heck, I just built the triplane a few months ago. That was one of my winter projects.
So yeah, just so what Joe said, building those Comet kit style things, a little bit tedious, tinkering. You'll enjoy this much better. You know, and they do say bigger flight's better, and this is a great project to start on.
Yeah, and one of the things I always point out is that if you're doing these builds and you make a mistake, don't panic. Every single piece of wood that comes in that kit, we have a replacement for. So
exactly, and
to
it's
buy the replacement
wood, right?
pieces, yeah, it's just wood. It's balsa and it's bass, and that's just about as complicated to get. There's some light ply in there, so if you mess something up, if you glue it, if you break it, it's all good. We literally make those pieces. Every single piece that's in that kit,
absolutely,
we have them on hand. So if you make a mistake, it's all good. You can continue on and fix it. So, which a lot of times I leave the fixes in there. So.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what I was going to say. During this series, chances are we will probably screw something up, and we'll show you how to fix it, how to correct it. And that's called the modeling part of it. And that's the fun part about it as well. It keeps you going, keep you motivated, and not take that little bit tense paranoia out of it. That this actually is very relaxing very calming. I call it my decompression chamber when I come into my workshop and kind of leave all that days behind. And especially the world we're living in right now, anxiety levels are real high. Everybody's watching too much news, too much information. This is for us to relax, chill out, have a good time, reach out to our customers, and do something fun.
Exactly. So I'm going to bring up, we also have over at the YouTube channel, I'm going to share the screen for you so you can see it. So over on the Balsa USA YouTube channel, and keep in mind, if you have not yet subscribed to the YouTube channel, you're going to want to go over there and do that, because the first official Friday of what would have been Joe Nall, we're going to be giving away a quarter scale kit of your choice. As soon as this number right here hits, oh, you can't see my pointer. As soon as that number there under Balsa USA Airplanes hits it's at 2.85K right now. As soon as that hits 3K, that triggers the giveaway. So anybody that gets there past that point, we'll still keep going all the way up until we hit the 3K. One of the things I wanted to bring up on here is there is a playlist listed here that has all of these videos listed. So right here is where the Shop Time Live videos will live. And right down here, 2 down, is going to be where the beginner series build is going to live. If you want to check out some of the videos on the beginner build series, they are all there and they are all archived. And the same thing is going to happen with the Shop Time Live videos. Once I get this set up, I will bring this up and show you. Once I get this set up here, this will actually be a subcategory of this playlist. So you'll be able to go into just the build videos, because I'm quite sure we're going to do more than one of these if I was going to guess. I still have you, Chuck? I don't have you. You have no audio. No audio from Chuck. Probably what we have to do with that, Chuck, is you probably have to go out and come back in. I'm guessing you got a call or something while we were streaming. Yep. I'm going to have you. Nope. I'll have you come out and then I'll have you come back in real quick. That's the only thing that's going to fix it. All righty. So while we wait on Chuck, he will be right back. I'll just put on here a reminder of this upcoming shows that we've got coming on. We're going to have I hear you, Scott. That's funny. We're going to have the Force Aerobatic team on Friday night at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All the guys are going to be here. We're going to have Matt Chapman. We're going to have Rob Holland and Bill Stein. So make sure you tune in for that. That's going to be a good interview. With those guys, it's probably going to get a little out of hand if I was going to guess. And we're also going to have coming up on Saturday morning, we're going to have retired Colonel Jerry Jive Kirby of the U.S. Air Force. He's going to be on here. He's also another full-scale aerobatic pilot. And then on Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to have Jason Duran from ZDZ. So there's lots of stuff coming up. And as soon as Chuck gets back, here he comes right here. There's Chuck. How we doing?
Hey, I'm good. Are we good?
Yep, we're good. You got a phone. You got a phone. It's all good. You get a phone call or a text message, and that's what threw it out. I did.
I got a phone call, California call, but we're all good.
We're all good. All right. So now we're back. Scott actually said Chuck never sounded better. That's Scott Anderson. So you're owing for that one.
Scotty. Yeah.
So let's go ahead and start walking through what we're going to need for this build. I'll let you start out, Chuck. You're going to be building, I believe, on a ceiling tile.
Yeah. Kind of an old school way, but also very handy. Actually, when I was in college building rubber band kits, like we talked about earlier, they were in those false ceilings, those ceiling tiles. I'd flip them out, put them on my desk, and build peanut scale models, and I'd slide them right back in the ceiling. On the back side of the drop-down ceiling tiles, on the back side, there's a smooth side, and it's very easy for the pins and things to stick into there. And so I'm just actually I had a couple of scrap 24 by 24 squares that I taped together, leveled them out. How did I level them out? I'm just building on a cheap Walmart 2 foot by 4 foot card table. And a lot of these things are plastic, they're molded just okay. But the way you level it out is you just stick papers, magazines, your wife's old magazines anymore, and take your straight edge and you just lay it across from corner to corner, and all you're doing is checking for gaps underneath. And you just keep stuffing papers underneath there to level out the board and give a relatively smooth surface to build from, and very inexpensive. You'll build your next models on these. If you do have false ceilings at your home or in your basement or whatever, take one of those out, put them down on the table, and when you're done, just slide it right back up.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to build, because I have several projects going on, I'm actually going to build on a piece of drywall that I already have on my bench. I had a scrap, and we level it the same way. So what we're talking about, and I'm going to bring this up so you can see. When you're talking about looking for level, this right here is what you're talking about. You want to lay that straight edge, and you want to try to use a nice metal straight edge. You can get these basically at any of the big box stores that are out there, and you want to check it for level from front to back, from side to side, and then from diagonal to diagonal as well. So that way you make sure that you get a perfectly flat surface. People get a little confused when we start talking about that. When we start talking about we're looking for a flat surface, not necessarily level surface, but it needs to be flat. So a lot of guys that I've seen will actually build on old draft tables, so the tables will tilt, and it makes it easier to get to the stuff. So you can have it tilted if that's what you prefer, but the surface of that tilted table has to be perfectly flat. Anytime it's not perfectly flat, that is all going to transfer right into your models, and that is absolutely not what you want.
And what we're trying to do is avoid, if that table has a warp in it, you'll build a warp in that wing panel, for example, or even that fuse. So we're just trying to build it as level as we can. If you're comfortable building on an angle or whatever which way, that's great. But we're just trying to build it nice and smooth and flat so you don't build any warps into any surfaces.
Yeah, and this is actually, I actually carry around a little 4 foot by 4 foot fold up table. Even a little fold up table like that would work for this. You could set it down in front of your TV. As long as you can keep the building surface perfectly flat, you can really literally build this anywhere.
And that's exactly what I'm working on. I'm just working on a 2 by 4 foot little folding table. That's all I got.
Very cool. I was actually going to build off of a scrap sheet of drywall that I had left over from putting this little table together here, but I realized that my scrap sheet wasn't quite wide enough. And of course, you can't go out and just buy that stuff right now. So I'm stuck doing it around my regular bench.
And for the newbies that are out there that are wondering why we're talking about using drywall or ceiling tiles, because we're going to be using pins to stick it into the surface, and that's how we're going to hold the parts down. All right, so we need something that will accept the pin, that will stay in there, and not move around, pop up, or anything like that. So it's not like you want to put a piece of plywood down and you're going to hammer them into the plywood. That's way a lot of work. You'll be wore out by the time you get a rudder done. So this is, like I said, it's very inexpensive. And lots of times, if you go to the big box stores, they sell these things by the case. That's typically how they sell them. But during the shipping process, or people going there and moving around and grabbing them, they get knocked off corners and stuff. Those are the ones we want. Half the time, I've got them for as cheap as $2. Sometimes they've even given them to me. So that's a little bonus if you can do that. If you don't have a drop-down ceiling or anything like that, go to the big box stores. Look for the ones that have broken corners and stuff. Those are the ones you want because you get them cheap.
And that's actually pretty funny you said that, because the sheet of drywall I'm working on. So I normally build on a hollow core door, and I set up a nice little flat surface for my hollow core door. The airplane, the North Star that I'm working on, was too wide for the door. So I went to the store and checked for sheets of drywall. And I just happened to think of it while I was there, because they had contractor packs of drywall. And I walked over and I was looking at those, and I was like, okay, well, what else do you have? So I went over and asked the guy, I said, do you guys sell the sheets of drywall individually? And I told him what I was going to do. And he says, I don't have any individual sheets right now, but we have a lot of these ones over here that were damaged. And I bought a 4x8 sheet of drywall for $1.06. So,
well, there you go.
Yeah, always ask. It doesn't hurt to ask, because the damage that you're not going to use, I've got a 4x8 sheet here, and I'm only really using a quarter of it. So you've got, and I've got 4 other tables built here with drywall, and it's the same thing. I've got all these leftover pieces, and it was $1.06, man. I mean, you just can't get better.
Joe,
than
now,
that.
How long do you use that drywall? How many builds will you use that drywall for?
So right now I'm looking at the one over there that's gotten the most builds. I'm looking at having 4 things built on that, and I can go on for quite some time. I mean, what Chuck's getting at is that a lot of times these will get several pinholes in them, but I haven't noticed it being an issue yet. Now,
I usually change out I use ceiling tiles on all my other projects that I have throughout my shop, just like Joe does. I probably change them out once every 4 years, and I probably just do that more for motivation side when I start a new project, and just clean the area, start new, re-level, just as for me it's more of a comfort zone kind of thing. But why not? It looks good, gives you a good mood, and so you start to build. So that's kind of like I said what I've done here. These were a couple of scrap pieces that I had. I taped them together. The seam's good. The seam's tight. There's no bumps or ridges in it, so. Well, it's a great surface to build from.
Yeah, and so for me, it's a little different for me because right now I'm doing lots and lots and lots of projects. So I would say probably, I don't know, maybe every 7 or so projects I got down, I'll swap out the drywall, because you can flip it over and use the other side. But I haven't ran into that yet. So far as to say we're good.
So on the ceiling tiles, you only get to use one side, so that's why I get that lifespan is kind of cut in half. But yeah, same thing. Great way to start, and great way to build an airplane on.
Yep. So Chuck was talking about leveling. So what I did on my end was I actually had some leftover sheeting. I think it's 1/32, probably 1/32 sheeting that I had picked up free from a club meeting at some point. And so I had a bunch of that stuff stacked up here. So I actually used the sheeting underneath the drywall to level it. So same thing Chuck did with the magazines. You can do with magazines. If you're anything like me, you got AMA magazines laying around all over the place. I've got, catalogs and all that stuff. Any of that kind of stuff you can use to level that surface. It's very important to make sure that surface is completely flat from back to front.
And it's also wise to check it for your next build, because things settle. We all settle. So and it's a nice way to make adjustments. You might find that you have a lower corner, and it's a good way to make adjustments on, and it's real easy. It's cheap to do, but also ensures a nice square build.
Right. And that's key. So he keeps talking a lot about pins. So my personal take on it is I keep on hand several different kinds of pins. So I have 2 different kinds of T-pins I generally stick to, and I'm going to try to put these on the camera so you can see them here. I have 2 different sizes of T-pins. I have the larger T-pins, which are these, and I have a little bit smaller T-pins, which are these. And I keep these in a little container.
Those things are huge.
Yeah, they're pretty good size. I forget what the measurement is. They're pretty big. I keep those on hand, and I keep the small ones on hand. And then I also keep a good stock of these grip pins. Okay. If you just do a Google search from grip pins, you used to be able to get these from hobby shops, but a lot of the hobby shops are going away. But you can still find these. These are grip pins, and I believe the company is named Mastercraft.
Right.
So you can get those.
I have the same pins assortment that you have sitting right here.
Yeah. And a quick tip: this is what I do. So, like if I'm putting the plans down, I can take a little piece of balsa, and I can put a little piece of balsa on there. And that way, when I put my plans to the table, it doesn't tend to rip as easy, because a lot of times while you're doing these builds, you'll rip the plans or you'll rip the wax paper a little bit. If you use a little piece of balsa on there and just grab a scrap and put it through a scrap,
I like that.
It holds a little bit. It gives it a little bit more purchase.
Yeah, a little bit more surface area to bite into and not tear things up. I like that. Never thought of that. Good tip,
it actually
Joe.
works pretty good. Thanks. Okay, so we've talked about the board. We've talked about pins. The next thing on the list is really simple. You can see it on Chuck's table there. Simple wax paper.
My wife will never miss it.
Yeah, the cheap stuff. I have like 20 rolls of this stuff. It doesn't really cost much. You can get that anywhere, and I think it's like $1 a roll, and a roll
Joe,
is plenty.
Why are we using wax paper? Tell the guys why we're using wax paper.
Okay, so the biggest reason to use wax paper is to make sure that you protect your plans. So when you lay your plans down, you're going to want to lay the wax paper down over the plans. And the reason you do that is because as you do your builds, you'll actually ruin the plans. Okay?
We'll glue things to the plans.
Yeah, you'll glue things to the plans, and the plans will start coming apart. And CA glue does not really stick very well to the wax paper. If you ruin the wax paper, you can pull the wax paper up and put a new piece of wax paper down. It's like transfer paper, because you can see right through it. Once you get this laid down on your plans, you can see right through the stuff. So you can see your paper, right through there, and that's the reason why you build on that, so you don't ruin your plans.
And if you ever run out of wax paper and your wife has saran wrap, that will work as well. You just have to be a little more fiddly with it, because it wrinkles real easy, but it has the same effect. CA and adhesive are not going to stick to it. Just smooth it out nice, and it'll do the same thing.
Don't Ever Grew Up had a good tip as well, Chuck. He said put a piece of tape on the plans and push the pins through that. That also helps with the tearing.
That's great idea.
Yeah. Just gives that pin a little bit more surface area, so you're not tearing stuff up as easily.
Yeah. Great comment.
Very good. Very good. Dale, I believe that's Dale, says he loves the grip pins. I don't know where to get them, but awesome. And actually, you know what? I actually just did. If you do a Google search for grip pins, and I will just, while we're talking, I will pull that up on here and show you. It's super simple, and you can get them from just about anywhere. I'm not sure if they still sell them at like Hobby Lobby. They might have them.
That's just what I was thinking, was Hobby Lobby.
If you have a Hobby Lobby near you, but if you do a search for grip pins, Midwest grip pins, there are just a ton of different places to get them from. Hobby and craft pins, you can get them right straight from the company. And they're about $8 for a box of 50, which is pretty decent.
Yeah, and for a project this size, that's plenty.
Yeah. The only thing I will tell you about the grip pins, so I'm going to give you a little tip. The grip pins, you have to be careful. Now, in Chuck's case, because Chuck's using a ceiling tile, it's not as imperative to be careful as it is with on my end. But if you can see here, and I'll bring this up so you can see it, the grip pins tend to bend pretty easily. See that?
Yeah, that they do.
So you got to be careful. They've got a thin pin on them, and when you're trying to put pressure on them to get them into your boards, sometimes you'll bend them. So just be aware of that. It's not anything bad about grip pins. It's just the way using them. I'm sure if you did ceiling tile versus drywall, that would be less of an issue.
Right on.
All right, so we got a couple of other things going on here. We got a guy saying Scotch tape. Yeah, we got that. And then another one says Saran wrap works good. Preston seal works great. Never tried Saran wrap. I don't know how that would work. I'm sure it works pretty good.
I have in a bind in it. It works. Like it's a little fiddly. You got to stretch it out because it wrinkles real easy, but it does to get the job done.
Yeah, it's perfect. I think wax paper is a little bit old school, but I'm telling you, it really works well.
Absolutely.
So, works good. Okay, so what else? What's next, Chuck? What else you got on your bench?
All right. First thing, like we mentioned this earlier, but just a 36-inch steel ruler. All right. It can be bigger. I like to see 36 to be your minimal size because, and we'll get a little bit later in the build, and I'll show you why. But obviously, we already talked about leveling the board. It's a good example for that. But as we get down into the project, we'll use this actually as a straight edge or to keep things square, tight, we'll actually pin things against it so that when you lay that long run down or that spar, that it's nice and straight. So a nice straight edge is always good. You pick these up anywhere. Gosh, I've had this thing's probably the old as I am. It's probably was my dad. So, but this is good. And also a smaller one if you have like a 6-inch one or something like that to measure smaller parts to see if it's a 16th inch balsa or 3/32. It'd be nice to have one of those as well. But definitely, you have one of this. I've seen guys use the wooden yardsticks. Those are pretty straight, and I'll just leave it at that.
So I went actually. Oops, I hit the wrong button here. I went a little bit different. I've got a very large. So this one's what? This one's 48-inch.
I have one of those for the bigger aircraft.
And these are perfect because the reason why I went with the bigger one because it's a little thicker. And I'm only supporting that by one end now, and it stays straight. And when you build, and like Chuck was saying, one of the first things we do is build the wing. And when you're building that spar and that wing, you're going to pin right straight to it. And that gives you a bit of a thicker edge to work on. So it works perfectly.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right.
What do we got next? Oh,
next, let's talk about adhesives.
Yes.
Okay. With this project, we're going to be basically using 3 different style adhesives. We'll be using Balsa USA's thick CA. All right. And thin, and then epoxy. Now we'll talk a little bit more about those as well. And something that Joe just popped up on the screen that's a really neat item is the little adhesive caddy that they sell. They're really cheap. They keep things standing up. They don't fall over. Little quick tip on CAs, guys. If you guys do use kicker, which is an accelerator, keep that away from your CAs because that will actually fume and kick or cure your CA sitting right next to it, bottle to bottle. So just a little tip there. So while we'll be using some kicker or accelerator in the process, you don't see any of that on my bench. It's actually sitting behind me, and I'll use it when I need it. But let's get back to the CAs and adhesives. Thin is typically used for when we're using balsa to balsa joints. Okay, and think of thin CA as spot welding. So if you're going to glue something together, we'll do just a drop. It's literally because what happens is that drop wicks in or absorbs or the balsa wood sucks that CA in, and that's what makes it that nice strong joint. Okay. What we don't want to do, and we're trying to avoid, if you do have 2 pieces together, to avoid any gaps, because your first thinking is, well, I'll just use some thicker CA and I'll fill that gap. But actually, that actually weakens the joint. So a nice tight joint on balsa to balsa connections, we're going to use a thin CA. Okay. When we start looking at the thicker CAs, as for 2 things. One, maybe we need a little bit more time to work with because the thicker CA is actually slower. The thin CA is almost instant. Okay. So if maybe I'm laminating a couple of parts together and I need just a little bit more time where I can lay some glue out and I can join the 2 parts together, give it a little bit of time to move around or wiggle in there. And what I'm meaning by time, guys, I'm talking like 5 seconds, 7 seconds kind of thing. So that's a good thing there. Also, when we're gluing maybe balsa to poplar or basswood, something maybe a little bit the next level up in the wood grain density, a thick CA is a good adhesion on that. And why? The longer or the slower the cure time, the stronger, the deeper the bond or the adhesion joint. Okay. And then finally,
real quick, one of the things that you'll realize with thick once you start your builds is thick actually doesn't like to bond balsa to ply as easily. So like Chuck was saying, anytime you're going to vary the woods, you're going to want to make sure you use the thick, because I meant to say thin. The thin doesn't like to wick into the different types of wood because of wood grain and all that stuff that you've got going on. Now, if you want to use thin to stick together ply to ply, that would work just fine. But for some reason, it doesn't like to go from balsa to ply or from balsa to bass.
Well, it's 2 different density surface of materials, and the CA tends to gravitate.
It gravitates towards the soft. So,
exactly. So,
sorry, go ahead.
No worries. But so then finally, when we look at high stress areas such as a firewall, landing gear rails, maybe a lamination of a spar or a dihedral brace, we're going to use epoxies. This is Balsa USA's 5-minute epoxy. It's a 2-part, mixed together, stir together, and you have a 5-minute work time to glue those parts together. There are longer epoxies, so if you're a little nervous, maybe this is your first build, we have a 15-minute, we have a 30 as well to slow that down to help you. But for general purpose, we're going to use 5 minutes to keep the project going. But once again, this is for those high stress areas: firewalls, landing gear mounts, maybe some spar work or dihedral brace, and strut, where we're going to maybe do some strut mount areas. That's where we're going to use our epoxy at.
I also use epoxy for hinging as well. So you'll see me use
gives you a little bit more time
for hinging. It gives you some time. Quick tip, I don't know if those of you that weren't here the other night, quick tip on hinging is if you take a little bit of petroleum jelly and put it down the hinge line, when you put your epoxy in and you go to set your hinge, you're not going to get any you're not going to get any epoxy into your hinge line, so you're not going to freeze your hinge line.
Yep. And that's for like a pin style hinge or a
pin hinge
style hinge, right? Yep.
Yeah, it also works for the pins. It also works for the like the Durbo heavy duty pins or hinges, and it works for the roll bar. Anytime you've got a pinned hinge, it'll keep that epoxy out of your hinge, which is
correct.
Works really good. Chuck Pierce says, I got into the hobby in 2015 with foamy warbirds. I've done 2 Balsa ply ARFs so far. I have a cell plane kit to build, but wasn't sure where to start. This show is perfect timing. That's exactly why we're doing it, Chuck.
That's why we're doing this, Joe or Chuck.
Perfect. Yep. Okay, so let's talk about a couple things. We just talked about CA, and I wanted to point out something that is not a mandatory purchase or anything that you have to have. But if you're going to be working, especially with thin CA, the pipettes that we have available on balsausa.com work really good. They come in a pack just like this. They come in a pack of 6. Okay. And what you do with those is you put your CA in them and use them instead of your bottle. So like if I pull off my bottle of thin here, you can see my lid is on, and I have never opened the lid of that glue. When I get the glue that I need, I put the lid back on it and good to go. So what you do is you take the pipette, you put the pipette down in the glue, you pull out the glue that you need for what you're doing, and then put the lid back on your bottle of CA. Okay? Makes the CA last a whole lot longer. Another tip that I'll give you with your thick. Okay? So this is a bottle of thick that I typically use. And what I do is once I open it, I do not put that cap back on there. So this is what I see a lot of people doing. What happens is if once you open this bottle of thick, and you start building, you start doing your stuff, they'll stick a pin inside here to keep it from drying out. That glue will not dry out inside that bottle. Putting a pin down inside there is the worst thing you can do, because what that does is that breaks the surface of the plastic that is designed not to stick to, like the inside of the bottle is designed so the glue won't stick to it. The cap lid is built the same way. It's got a coating on it. You put a pin down in there, you're taking that coating off. So that's why your bottles of glue get all gummed up. So what I'm going to do, and I don't know if it's going to show very good on the video. So this is a bottle of glue that I've been working with, and it's got some glue around the edge. Literally, to get that off of there, all you have to do, and all I do for this is when it gets gummy on the end like that, if you just take a piece of pliers and kind of give it a little twist around the outside,
little flex it a little bit,
that glue will pop right off there, and then your bottle's open again.
Right.
Okay.
And Joe, when you're not using your CA, where do you store it?
I usually keep it in the fridge. So
there you go.
If I'm doing a build, I'll have it in my glue caddy, obviously. But when I'm not using it, it's in the fridge.
Yeah.
And I've got my eyes out for one of the college fridges that I can keep right here in my shop, but I got a fridge out in my garage I keep it in.
They're probably pretty popular right now. Just saying.
I live right by MSU, so.
Yeah, that's right. You do. Let me know if you find another one laying around. I'll come get it from you.
Yeah, sure.
So, all right, we've talked about CAs, epoxies, Joe had a couple of great tips for you guys. And when you're, like I said, when you're not using them, put them in the fridge. You don't need to put your kicker or accelerator in the fridge. Just like I said earlier, keep it away from your CAs, because that will actually fume and kick and prematurely cure the CAs you've done.
Yeah.
So
my CAs are on this end of the table, and at 8 feet away, my kicker is on that end of the table. So we did have a quick question that I want to address. Don't ever give up says, my epoxy hardener has solidified on the shelf. Can the two parts be purchased separately? So quick tip. If you take your hardener, your bottle of hardener, we get this all the time. That's the wrong. So if I take my bottle of hardener and my bottle of hardener gets hard, and that happens even from the factory, we get them that way. If you take this, and there's two ways to do it, okay? First of all, I wouldn't advise doing this in your wife or significant other's microwave. But take the top off and open it up, and you can stick it on a paper plate and stick it in the microwave for like literally 3 seconds. No longer than that. Do it in little increments. 3 seconds is all the longer I recommend, because you'll melt the bottle and then you have a mess. Okay, so like 3 seconds. Or another way is if you get you a pan, and again, I would suggest getting you an old pan that your wife's not going to be mad about, and you can put it on the stove and heat it up. That hardener will let loose and be just like brand new. Okay, that's Joe, just a quick tip.
My previous workshop, which was in the very basement of this house, always ran very cool. So what I would do is, especially when I was fiberglassing, where you need to really work massage flat, and that's another seminar that you and I need to talk about. We already talked about doing one, but I would take an old piece of Tupperware and I won't put boiling water, but I'd put the hottest water to come out of my tap in there, take my epoxies and put them in there while I was working on the build. And that temperature rose it just enough that when these things poured out, they were perfectly pliable, smooth, they mixed well together. And so that helped that process. And that water would stay hot for 30, 40 minutes, just enough for me to do the process I needed to do. And if I ever needed to bring that temperature back up, throw some more hot water on it, and try not to destroy my wife's microwave.
To be clear on that brings up a good point. To be clear on the pan method that I was talking about, what I'm talking about is putting the water, not the epoxy. Heat the water up on the stove, and then put the epoxy. Take the pan off the stove and put the epoxy in the pan. Don't put the epoxy in the pan while you're trying to do that. You'll make a
Joe,
mess.
we need to put that disclaimer right there across the screen, okay?
Blowing up a bottle of epoxy in your wife's kitchen is not approved. Just saying.
Not recommended, especially in these times. We're all really too close right now. So.
Right, exactly. Actually, Thomas says monocoat heat gun can also work. That's actually a really good idea. I'd never thought of that. Heat it up a little bit with the heat gun or a blow dryer even. That's a great idea. I like that. I lost your audio again, Chuck. Did you get another phone call? I lost your audio again. So we've lost Chuck's microphone again. He's going to get reset back up here. I will click him out and see if he can get it back. So I really appreciate the input. It's nice to see everybody here. We're going to keep this going. We're going to go for about 20 more minutes. So if you have any questions, bring them on up. Fred, I think that's Fred, says, I have an old mini crock pot that go for $1 at a garage sale that I use for cleaning engines and antifreeze and warming epoxy. It can be set to a very low temperature. That's a great idea too. I actually use the crock pot idea for loosening glow motors, cleaning up glow motors is perfect for that. You take some, now I have to, let me add Chuck back in. Are you there, buddy?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
All right.
That's a great tip. You can actually use the crock pot to loosen seize engines like glow motors. I've got some really old glow motors, like barn find glow motors, that I was able to bring back to brand new luster. And what you do is you get you a cheap mini crock pot, and I believe that's Fred, if I'm not mistaken, Fred Huber. You get you a cheap mini crock pot, and you take some antifreeze and you put the crock pot like on medium in a well ventilated area. I would suggest doing this outside. Don't want to do this in the house. Okay. That's the equivalent to running a generator in your house. Not a good idea. Don't use it. If you're going to put antifreeze in it, like he just said, do not use it for anything else ever again. It's only going to be used for engines. That's it. You're not going to use it for food, nothing, because that stuff is poison. Okay, so don't ever use it for food again. Don't use your wife's crock pot again. Get your own, and use that for engines. You can use that for epoxy. That's a great idea on the crock pot for the epoxy. So perfect. All right, Chuck, what do we got next, buddy?
All right, we talked about CAs. We're going to talk a little bit about sandpaper. We have a bunch of choices on sandpaper. For this project, I have Great Plains sanding bar blocks. These could be a small piece of 2x4, a small piece of 2x2, foam. I use scrap foam blocks. I use self-adhesive sandpaper put on these, and I sand them. But for this purpose for you guys, a couple of what they call T blocks, all right? Self-adhesive sandpaper. I'm going to primarily be using 2 grits, an 80 grit to rough in parts, and probably a 180 to level and smooth everything out, okay, before we do the final covering. So it's really on a project like this, if you take your time, you build right, you build light, that's our saying here, those are only 2 pieces of sandpaper that you'll need. And once again, and the reason we're on blocks is that it helps you, if you have it in the palm of your hand and you're trying to sand a surface, you'll sand a divot in it. So this blocks helps keep everything nice, flat, and square. Joe?
Yeah, so one of the things that we actually have on our site is this bag of blocks. So if you're just getting into building and you don't have a lot of blocks, you can go on balsausa.com, and for $14, you can get what's called a bag of blocks. And the reason I'm pointing that out is because for those of you that are getting started, this is just a block out of the bag of blocks, and I've taken some 3M spray adhesive, and I've put a 100 grit sandpaper on this side and a 200 grit sandpaper on this side. So I have 2 different sides, 2 different sandpapers for one block. That way you can get, this is super cheap. You know, I know we've all got, some of us have these Great Plains blocks like Chuck showed, and I actually marked them. So this one has on there, you can see where I've wrote 220. I've written 80 on this one. And again, it's just 3M contact adhesive on the back. Yep. And they stay. I have found that some of the self-adhesive sandpapers don't have the best adhesive in the world. So I go ahead and I put a little bit of contact adhesive on there as well. And then when I get ready to take it up, I just peel it off and it goes. But you're going to want to have at least a couple of grits.
Right. And there's 2 types of adhesives out there. Joe is touching them from 3M. There's a permanent and a removable. Just make sure you get the removable.
Yep, the removable. I believe it's the red with silver writing.
Right.
So, and again,
lastly,
yeah, go ahead.
You'll have scrap pieces of wood, and you'll find out when you're working in an area that you don't, maybe your sanding block is too big, your fingers are too big. Well, you can make yourself own little tools out of the scrap balsa that comes in a kit that helps you get into those little key areas. I constantly have these things laying around my workbench. I have a little drawer that I throw these things in. So if I need to get into a little tight area, maybe it's around the cockpit or in between a strut or something like that, that little piece, you know, that I made up is perfect for the application. And as you build, you'll find out you'll make some that maybe have a V shape in them or things like that. And just hang on to those. You'll build them as you go. These are just great little self-made tools that you'll continue to use on your other projects.
Yeah, and a couple other things too is, and I left mine, I can see them. They're sitting over there on my other bench. Clothespins. Take
mine right here.
the wooden clothespins, and you can take them apart and use the back of the straight wooden clothespin as a sanding block. And another one that I've gotten actually that I thought was a brilliant idea, I got off of my good friend Gregory Obi-Han Benobi-Han. Anytime you break a prop at the shop or at the field, keep that broken prop. Cut off the broken ends flat and use that prop. Put sandpaper on that prop, and you can use that prop as a sanding tool too to make some nice curves or get into some tight areas. I'd always thrown away broken props, but I don't now. I keep them.
That's
I think
that's a great
next
idea. I always use them as paint stirrers, but I'm going to hang on to some more for sandpaper.
Yeah, you just do the same thing. You spray them down with adhesive, and you put the sandpaper you want to on there, and they make a really nice, almost like a custom sanding tool.
Okay. I just got a couple other quick things here, Joe, because I know on what time? Well, we got about another 13 minutes.
We got about 10 minutes left, yeah.
Yep. Squares, to keep things nice, square, aligned. These are what they call Machinists Squares. You can pick these up at the big box stores if you want to. They sell them like either in pairs. About $8 a pair is kind of what they are. I have a lot of these, but also when I work on the smaller projects and I travel a lot for business, I keep getting these hotel key cards, and I'm finding multiple sources for these. I first would use them for laying out epoxy on a wing when I'm doing some fiberglassing, and maybe we'll talk about that later. But I cut them in half, and they make perfect little squares. And so I tend to have a stack of these. Matter of fact, our sales guys at work as well, my buddies, I'll come in on a Monday morning when those guys come off the road as well, and I'll have a stack of these sitting on my desk because they know how much I use these things and I go through these things. So just a nice little cheap way. You can actually use a business card, a paper business card, but obviously it's a little bit more flimsy. But these little plastic ones, cut them in half right down the middle, and you got perfect little squares. And you'll end up finding out these are valuable when you're building a former side and you're building the facade side and you put the bulkhead on, you square right up, hit it with the CA, boom, you're done, and you check for squareness.
Yep. Another thing that I use all that stuff as well. And there's all shapes and sizes of square. I also grabbed up some of these 1, 2, 3 blocks. If you're so inclined, they do have these available on Amazon. You can buy them in sets on Amazon. They work great. I prefer the ones without the holes because they've got some weight to them. Those make great squares as well. I will say one thing. Go ahead, Chuck. Go ahead, buddy.
And when we're talking about, with our lining tools, using things and our cutting tools, obviously everybody knows about X-Acto knife. A straight edge razor blade is really good for making nice, clean, square cuts on sticks, 1/4-inch sticks, 1/8-inch sticks, and so forth. Now, this is a real cheap cutting pad that came from they sell fabric, Joanne Fabrics. There you go, or Hobby Lobby. And these are real nice when you're building a smaller project like this, because you don't. The normal ones are pretty big, and those are nice too if you're working on a bigger project. But these are nice. But also, what I found as well, if you've got a home project like a honey list project or a honeydew list project at home, you got an extra piece of maybe ceramic tile. Those work well. Those work great as well, as long as it's a smooth one. Obviously, you don't want to use the ones that have all the pits and everything in them that look like marble. But if you have a nice smooth piece of ceramic tile, those work just as well.
Yep. And I have another quick tip on that. When you're at your garage sales, I grab these little garage sale cutting boards. I buy them all the time. I can usually get them for pennies. And I've got a whole stack of them. I've got thick ones like this. I've got thin ones that are like a sheet of paper. And I use those for my cutting surfaces as well. One of the things I will make sure I cover quick is that if you are going to place your order for your Balsa USA Nieuport, one of the things you might want to check out are the tool assortments that we have. So we have 100-pack of razor blades. We have 100 packs of the number 11 blades. We do have knife handles. We have glue caddies. All that stuff is available on balsausa.com. Just go through and click airplane accessories and tools, and all that stuff is on there. And we've got pretty decent price. So you can get 100 razor blades for $9. You can get 100.
That's crazy cheap.
Yeah, you can get 111 blades for $16. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, because I ran out. I paid twice that at office. I think one of the office stores about 2 weeks ago when I ran out and I needed some.
Yeah, add them to your order. Yeah, add them to your order. So if you're going to order a Nieuport, I'm going to give you a quick tip. You're already going to get free shipping on that kit, just so you know. But any of that kind of stuff you need, make sure you grab it then, because it's going to be a lot cheaper than buying it from a big box store. One of the other things we have on hand are Zona Saws. These are very handy to have. We have one on there that is a 4-way Zona Saw, and it comes with 4 different blades for it. So it's got the bigger blade, it's got the smaller blade, it's got the what I call the keyhole blade. I've got the blade sitting right here. I'm grabbing them out. So it comes with the bigger blade. It comes with the medium blade. It comes with what I call the keyhole blade, and it comes with a bigger keyhole blade like that. Relatively inexpensive, great to have on hand. If you aren't wanting to purchase anything new and you already have one of these fat mech saws, is real nice to have. They work like a Zona saw, a little bit thicker, and they do the same kind of deal. And that's really just about it. I can't think of anything that we've forgotten. I'm looking down my list here.
And the whole thing is to keep this thing very simple, very practical. So you don't need to have, I know we all have our man caves and we're all proud of the things and the gadgets and the tools, like Tim Toolman. But to build this project is very simple, low cost, low items. Most of the items you have around your house already. So you may not know it, but look around, they're there. Like I said, clothespins, single head razor blades, the small little squares. It's all perfect. One thing, Joe, I want to talk about is on the new guys that are here. Balsa USA aircraft they all come with a great manual. All right. I recommend read it a couple of times, put it on your nightstand, read it a couple of times. In the first front half of the book, it has some great tips about adhesives, like we talked about. Maybe on some laminating tips, how to line things up. The first 6 pages or so are just chock full of those great ideas. So I really recommend reading it a few times. That also allows you to get familiar with a lot of terminology when they talk about a stringer or a long run or a rib or a false rib or a spar and things like that. So it just kind of gets your mind working, puts it all in the right place. But it's a great start. Along the way, and if you, and on page, let me see, jump in here. Balsa USA does a real neat job. It's called A Key to the Die Cut Parts. Now, let's talk about die cut parts a little bit. There's 2 types of parts and aircraft kits out there. There are die cut, which is what this kit is. Then there's what they call a new style, air quotes here, laser cut kit. Balsa USA has both, okay? And what we're doing is we're taking any cut kits, once they run their lifespan within inventory, we'll actually turn that into a laser cut kit parts. A couple of reasons. The dies, the stamps that cut the parts out, they wear out. Okay, and the laser cutting is now turned into a CAD format type of thing, and it's much easier and more efficient to work and to cut the parts out. But this is one of the last of the groupings, I'm going to call it that, on the die cut parts list. So with that being said, on pages 10, 11, 12, and I believe 13 and 14, yes, there's actually a drawing of what these of what the part sheets look like. And I'll pull them up right here. And one of the things that I do, and I strongly suggest you guys do, because once again, this helps you familiarize yourself with the aircraft. So this is what a die cut part sheet kind of looks like. I don't know if I can zoom in there and you can see it. You can see the faint parts are die cut in there, okay? What I have done is I've looked at that sheet, got my handy dandy pen right here, and I find out, okay, what sheet number is that? And this particular one has to be die cut sheet number 74. So I wrote number 74 in the corner. So now as I'm looking for the parts, I'm building rudders, there's a die cut sheet I done. Now, you can actually take it one step further. You can remove the parts from the die cut sheet and put them in a baggie. And this is actually my fuselage baggie. So anything that is pertaining to the fuselage that is in a die cut part is now in this baggie. Okay, and so I've done this for the rudder, the horizontal, and the wings itself. So now I have all these baggy parts set out, and also the parts are labeled in there where I've drawn the part number actually on the former or on the particular former. So now as I build this, it's a really quick reference. But also what this has done is it helps me familiarize myself with the process of where the parts go. For the newbies out there, F is for fuselage, W is for wing, S is for stab, R is for rudder, and so forth. So just a little quick tip there. And what this does is this kind of really speeds up the process of the building. So you spend less time hunting, less time looking for the parts. And if you really wanted to go to the next level, there's a bunch of sticks and small sheeting in the box as well that'll help you. Label those as well, so you don't have to do any guessing.
Yeah, I was actually just going to recommend that. So take your ruler And I do this on every kit that I build because, like Chuck said, this is going to make it so much easier. I label every single part because I can't tell you how often me and Joe gets a phone call or an email or a text message from somebody saying, you know what, I used the 1/32 on where I was supposed to use the 2/32 or whatever, because a lot of the parts are really close. So what I do is I literally go through and I measure every stick. I set them all aside. So you'll have 36, 24, 14, get those all separated. And then I go through and measure each individual piece and label it so that when I pull a piece, I know, because if you don't do that, you don't have to do that. But if you don't do that, like if you're building out of your box that the kit came in, you will spend more time searching for parts than you will gluing parts on a board in a session. Measure it out real quick. It only takes a couple minutes to go through the entire kit, label all the kits from start to finish. And then that way, when you're pulling parts and you're starting to get stuff, you're cutting this and you're jimming that and you're moving stuff around, that way you know where everything is and you don't have to worry about trying to find it every time. It's so easy to do. It only takes just a couple of minutes.
You probably at the end of a build, Joe, it would save you probably 6 hours.
At least.
I would guess. It's huge.
Yeah.
And like I said, the bonus side of it is it helps you familiarize yourself with all the pieces. And like Joe said, I don't know how many times, and I've done it myself, you tend to grab the first part that's maybe on the top of the box. And so you think that's a 1/16 by 6 by 4. Well, the instructions called out for a 1/16 by 4 by 4. Well, now I've just used that part. And that's what Balsa USA does a great job. It'll actually tell you not only the thickness of the balsa that's to be used in that area, but also its square dimension, 6 by 4, 4 by 8, or whatever. Yep. And so right then, that's the key you need to, that's the part you need to use. And I've cut the wrong parts. I've done it. So by labeling even those, what the dimensions are, you see it right there, and boom, and you just save an enormous amount of time, and plus makes the experience that much more enjoyable.
Yeah, and after the first time I had to call someplace, this is before I worked for Balsa, first time I had to call someplace and say, hey, listen, I'm an idiot. I cut the wrong piece. Can you send me another one? That's when I started going through and labeling all my parts. So
absolutely.
It takes maybe, for a kit this size, I'd say maybe 30 minutes to go through the entire box and label everything. And when you're done with it, you won't have burnt 6 hours looking for parts, because like Chuck said, you'll, in this size of a kit for this build, you're looking at least 6 hours of looking for parts if you don't do that.
And so imagine if you're building a third scale kit.
Oh goodness,
triple that, right?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Then you want to build a great third scale triplane like I did, and now you got 3 wings.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
The parts just go more and more and more. But
exactly.
But that's the fun of it. And guys, I'll say this, and the Balsa USA guys and gals do such a great job on packing these kits. When you open that kit and you start sorting it, I don't care how hard you try, it's not going back in.
Right, exactly.
So you got to build, and let's go.
Got to build. I did have a question show up. I had Chuck showed up and said, I just stumbled on this live show. What are the frequencies for these live shows? And that's a great question to end the show on. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a live build along series on Shoptime Live on Balsa USA Facebook and YouTube channel. We're going to be doing these videos on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Saturday 12 to 1 Eastern Standard Time. And we're going to do this until we get them built. So I'm guessing that we're probably looking at 4 weeks with three sessions a week. I'm guessing
that'd be perfect.
It's going to be close to that. So we'll see how it goes. We're going to keep them going until it's done. And also I wanted to mention that the Balsa USA coupon code, the N17 build, all caps, no spaces, will be active until the build is finished. So if you're not wanting to pull the trigger right now, if you want to wait for a little bit, that's fine. The coupon code will still be good up until the point where we finish the build videos online. So awesome. I want to thank everybody for showing up. I want to thank Chuck Hamilton for stepping up and helping us do this build video. And it sounds like we might have a special guest coming on Saturday. We'll announce him when he gets here. Then I really appreciate everybody's support. Thanks, guys, for being here, for doing what you guys do, because if it wasn't for all you guys out here doing it, we would not be doing what we do. And Tim says coupon code, so I'm going to put it in the chat window. It's N17 BILD. That's going to get you 10% off of the 1/6 scale Balsa USA Nieuport kit right on balsausa.com. You put that into your coupon code area on your cart, and you will get 10% off. Again, thanks everybody for being here. Thanks for showing up. Keep in mind, we're going to be doing this a lot. Also, keep in mind, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time this Friday night and prime time, we're going to have Force Aerobatic Team, which is going to include Matt Chapman, Rob Holland, and Bill Stein. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be awesome. We've got lots of cool stuff coming up. So make sure you stay tuned. Make sure you get over to that YouTube channel and subscribe and hit that bell button. As soon as we hit 3K subscribers on the YouTube channel, we are going to give away a quarter scale kit of the winner's choice. So here we go. Thanks everybody much for being here. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and happy building.